And we welcome you on in to another episode of the Big Time Sports Podcast Show with Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Balla here to give you the latest in the sporting world. Mitch, it is good to be back with you for the start of the week. We're coming off a weekend, man, where we have one thing in mind, as well as a couple other small things, but one huge thing in mind to talk about here on the start of this show.
You're talking about opening day being right around the corner for baseball, aren't you?
Exactly. You've got your Guardians red on. I got some other stuff here. I got a ball that I can't reach right now, so I have no props, but it's good to be back here, and it's good to be with you guys to list off what's going to be going on here in the sporting world for the next couple of days and what's happened for the last few. But before we get into our show, we want to remind you guys of what's happening here on This Week in Big Time Sports. We have a lot of stuff coming up here on the Big Time Sports programming for this week, obviously with postseasons coming around, not just in basketball, but in other sports. We start off with of course, the Big Time Sports Show, which we have special guests on every week. This coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Friday at 10 p.m., you can check out Charlie hanging out with the wrestlers of Claymont High School, the Mustangs wrestling team about to head into tournament play, and it should be a good one there. Now, as for the games that are coming this week, we will have on Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and Wednesday at 3 p.m. replays of the West Branch Central Catholic basketball game. So it'll be the Warriors of West Branch taking on the Saints of Central Catholic, and the Saints were one of the teams that played in the showcase this week. We'll get to that later on in the show. And obviously this coming Thursday at 10:30 p.m. and Friday at 6 p.m. it is the IVC Wrestling Championship. You'll see many teams like Claymont competing for their standing in the Inter Valley Conference. And then this Friday, we'll see the Dover Crimson Tornadoes up against their rival New Philadelphia Quakers in basketball. You can find that game on Friday at 11 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m. Check your local listings, whether you have North or South programming. Mitch, what do we have in store for Stark County this week?
Well, Mitch, for starters, on the Big Time Sports television show, we can get to meet the Northwest Indians boys basketball team. Replay of the show will be Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. and Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. And then in terms of game of the week up here in Stark County, we have the Louisville Leopards versus the Massillon Tigers. Replay of that game Tuesday night at 10:30 p.m. and Wednesday night at 5 p.m. to watch the replay of the Leopards and the Tigers.
Sounds good. And of course, once again, we just want to remind you guys that you can check your local listings, whether you live in Tuscarawas County or Stark County, to find these replays. You can obviously go to Channel 15 if you have Spectrum, or go to MCT 128, or you can check out BigTimeSportsOhio.com. You can find our latest videos and articles and broadcasts there. So, Mitch, let's get to it, man. It's the game that many people were highly anticipating, the game between two of the NFL's best this year, the Chiefs and the Eagles. And it's a game in which I think both teams, pretty much the most part, lived up to the hype. This was a game that was very competitive, back and forth. Even with the team getting up 10 points at the half, like the Eagles, the Chiefs found their way back into the game by really running that offense efficiently. And then it had this ultimate ending that ultimately kind of felt like a bit of a step down from the quality of play that we had been seeing for around the first 57, 58 minutes or so. So I think it was a good game. Congratulations to the Chiefs. Obviously, your second Super Bowl in 3 tries here. You guys are building something special there. And the Eagles came that close, Mitch, but unfortunately, it came down to the Zebras, but not in a way that I initially thought it would following the game.
Yeah, it was a great game. Like, that's all I had really hoped for, Mitch. When you and I were talking last week about previewing this Super Bowl, we just wanted it to be a very, very good Super Bowl. And it was, for the most part. I mean, you talk about swings of events, emotions, teams getting hot, and taking all the momentum. You just hate to see a game end like that. You hate to see it be, I don't want to see the outcome be determined by the officials, but Mitch, there weren't many penalty flags all game.
No.
If we're being honest here. I mean, there was no roughing the passer, to my knowledge. There was no pass interference, to my knowledge. And then for a holding call to be called at that point and stage in the game, it sucks. But at the same time, as much as I hated the call, I can't sit here and say it was the wrong call, because you even had the Eagles corner come out after the game and said he held him. So anybody that says that wasn't the right call, I mean, the person that committed the penalty even came out and said, I did hold him. You just, the way the game was being played, Mitch, you didn't want to see it. You wanted to see the Eagles get a chance. And yes, they got the ball back with 8 seconds left. So
Yeah.
that doesn't really count. You wanted to see them get it back with maybe a minute 45 to go, maybe one timeout. You wanted to see, Jalen Hurts have a shot because of the way those quarterbacks were playing, especially Mahomes in the second half, but Hurts the entire game. It was awesome. It was electrifying. It was exactly what you wanted to see. And we had the two top teams throughout the entire regular season in the NFL, the number one seed in each conference, going toe to toe with each other. It was a lot of fun, but you just hate to see a game end like that. And let's keep in mind, Mitch, it was called holding. It was a holding penalty called. There's people saying, why'd they call pass interference? That ball wasn't catchable. That's why it was a holding call. If it was pass interference, that flag probably gets picked up because that ball did not seem catchable.
Right.
At the same time, it didn't seem catchable because he was held. The way I feel about this game, though, is I think, first off, and I meant to send this to you to see if we could pull it up on the screen, but I completely forgot. ESPN put a graphic out of Patrick Mahomes stepping over Jalen Hurts. I just find that extremely disrespectful. I do. Mahomes played a great game in the second half, really. I mean, Mitch, if you would have said before the Super Bowl, if you would have told me last week, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to throw for 300 plus yards and Mahomes isn't even going to get 200, I would have said you're a liar. I would have said, I don't know what you're on, but I need to know what you're on in case I ever need it. But you're a liar. But sure enough, Jalen Hurts goes 27 to 38, 304 touchdowns, 304 yards, 1 touchdown. Yes, he had a costly turnover, but he came right back after he fumbled on the scoop and score for the Chiefs, and he led the the Eagles down the field. And Mahomes was 21 to 27 with 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. I just did not find the graphic to be fair because I thought Jalen Hurts played a phenomenal game. I also thought Jalen Hurts proved all the doubters wrong that didn't think he could A, be a good quarterback in the NFL, or B, be the franchise quarterback a team needs. And I think, Mitch, after what we saw this season, it's safe to say he is. He was the MVP runner-up in the regular season, obviously, to Patrick Mahomes. That was my biggest gripe, to be honest with you, is I just feel that there's still big outlets, ESPN being one of them, disrespecting the effort Jalen Hurts put out there last night when realistically, this vaunted Eagles defense that we heard all about, they led the league in sacks. Their front four was tremendous. They don't have to rush the passer to get to the quarterback, and they had no sacks last night. I thought Hurts did everything he possibly could.
Yeah.
And ultimately the better overall quarterback, because if you ask me which quarterback do you want to start a team, I'm still taking Patrick Mahomes.
Sure.
The better overall quarterback willed his team down the field, put him in position to win. And they outscored the Eagles 24-11 in the second half. I mean, that's the story right there. The Eagles had all the momentum going into halftime. Mahomes limping into the locker room. You weren't sure what he was going to do. Now, obviously, he got shot up with something at halftime because he didn't really look like he was limping at all in the second half. But that's what professional football is when you have these top tier medical staffs. We saw it against the Jaguars, Bengals. He didn't look that banged up. So credit to the Chiefs. Second Super Bowl win now in 5 years, 4 years?
4
which
years.
is incredible. Yep. Andy Reid getting revenge against the team that let him go, that he took to one Super Bowl and couldn't beat. All in all, besides the call, so besides really the last 2 minutes of the game, Mitch, it was a phenomenal game. I enjoyed watching the Super Bowl as a fan of just football because my team can't get there. It was a blast. It was a really, really good game.
This was the only one that I could find. I don't think this is the one you're referring to. Yeah, I didn't think so.
I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
Yeah, because look, I made it no secret that I had picked the Eagles to win because I thought they were the team coming in that was on a better roll than Kansas City was. Kansas City had to semi-sweat out a game against Jacksonville and then really had to nail down against the Bengals. But that first half kind of felt like what happened with San Francisco just 3 years ago, where San Francisco has that hold for the majority of the game, and then Kansas City is able to slip out and find some breaks. Now, granted, Kansas City had more of an offensive system going than they did 3 years ago. They obviously had that great opening drive for their side right after the Eagles took the ball down and scored. You had what's his name? Bolton making that play on Hurts, or it wasn't even a knockout. It was just the ball fell out of Hurts' hands and it was taken back to the house. It was nearly taken back a second time because there were a number of points last night where, the replay really came out to be and people were getting frustrated because It's like, what is a catch? What is it not a catch anymore? And I didn't think that was a catch, that one that was nearly taken back. But I also thought you could have called the one for Devontae Smith just before halftime as well, because it was that close and you call it
Yeah.
a completion.
Before you go further, I have to ask, were you at all triggered last night on the Miles Sanders on the field called catch fumble return for a touchdown? Because that is the same exact stadium Ohio State and Clemson played in 2020, when Ohio State clearly stripped a ball after a catch. 2+ feet were made and a football move was made, and then it was overturned to an incomplete catch. Because I was a little bit triggered last night, Mitch.
I wasn't thinking about that. I had seen during the broadcast that two of the best Super Bowls had been played in that stadium prior to this one, which was the Giants beating the undefeated Patriots, and I think the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl against Seattle. Yes. So that's a good stadium to have three of those games in.
Good games, bad field.
Against bad field. What was up last night? You're painting the entirety of the grass. I understand it's like for presentation, maybe you want to make it look a little brighter than it is, but if you're gonna do that, then play. I mean, you saw multiple guys have to switch cleats throughout the game.
Right. And this is I'm gonna make sure I give credit. This is from Joe Pompolano. So this is a tweet he sent out last night. And obviously, the Super Bowl we know is a big deal. Not only is it a big deal, football fans, Mitch, people, the casual fan and people that don't watch football watch the Super Bowl. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest TV show of the year. The NFL spent 2 years preparing the grass for the game at the Super Bowl. The grass was grown at a local sod farm in Phoenix, Arizona. It was installed 2 weeks ago, and the field has been rolled out each morning for daily sunshine, which is all really cool. There's only 2 stadiums in the NFL to do that. It is obviously now State Farm Stadium in Arizona, and I believe Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas is the other stadium that does that, because these are inside or dome stadiums, and they wheel the grass out to get the sunlight. They wheel it back in. The NFL spent $800,000 on that field last night.
Mm-hmm.
How on earth do you have players slipping? And one player said it was like they were on an ice rink. How on earth do you let that happen? And it wasn't, let's not act like, oh, it's because of the halftime show with Rihanna and, they had to wheel all that stuff out and wheel it off.
No, that was happening in the first half.
Exactly. And so that whole argument's out the window. And that's why players, Mitch, they said they switched the cleats at halftime. So that means they would have went into the locker room before at halftime knowing they needed to change the cleats. So that whole argument's out. What on earth? My whole thing with this is we saw it with Ohio State and Clemson in 2020, the Sugar Bowl. We saw it this past year with Michigan and TCU in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Players slipping all over. There is something with whatever they do. Obviously, I know it's a different field because I just read you the facts. NFL paid $800,000 for this. There is something they do in Arizona, though, Mitch. Outside of Cardinals games, I don't watch Cardinals games. Players are slipping on these surfaces in Arizona in State Farm Stadium more often than not. You can go back and look at histories of games played at the stadium and players slipping all over the field and losing their footing. I mean, heck, you almost saw, was it Harrison Butker or Elliott last night, snap their ankle on a kickoff, slipping with the plant foot. It was absurd, absolutely absurd. And I think part of that had to do with why the Eagles couldn't get much pressure on Mahomes. You always hear these NFL defensive linemen, they never want to play in snow because it's hard to get their footing, be able to make quick cuts and moves past linemen.
Sure.
I think I'm giving the Chiefs offensive line the most credit, by the way. I think they deserved the MVP award last night in the Super Bowl. But this definitely had a factor for both sides in the game. One team came out on top, but I can't believe that they paid $800,000 for that field, and it was as bad of quality as we saw.
So was this like a real grass, or was this like a slit?
This is
real grass. Okay, because the only reference I had was the issue earlier in the season with slit turf, or I think that's the term of it, is a slit film turf.
Yeah.
Which NFLPA president J.C. Treader called upon the league to ban that material because it was used in 6 stadiums and players were typically getting hurt on it compared to regular grass. But that's such a weird. It's such a fascinatingly odd addition to this game, which already had a number of factors going into each and every play. I mean, you look at some of the things that happened earlier on in the contest where, I was surprised there wasn't that helmet to helmet hit in the beginning of the game. There was one. And then obviously with all the instant replays that were happening. And then again, going back to that Bradbury play. It's more so just a poorly timed call than anything else,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have it, because all the factors that were necessary to have that call be so impactful were right there, because the Eagles were running out of timeouts. The Chiefs were in a spot where they could take the lead just on a field goal, which kind of was frustrating, because how did the Eagles let Mahomes earlier in the drive go for that huge quarterback scramble up the middle on one good ankle and 80 painkillers? I just don't know. But look, this was a Super Bowl that I think was in line to maybe become one of the top 10, if not top 5 championship games of all time. I think this now slips to maybe 10 or 12. And it's debatable. I was going off of a list of it was NFL.com who put up their own list of the top Super Bowls of all time. They had number 1 as the Steelers Cowboys game in Super Bowl 13, which was a great game. I'll give you that, but I don't know if I would put it number 1. Obviously, you have the Giants Patriots game, the Seahawks and Patriots and Falcons. That's my number 1. Giants and Bills. And then the point where I was like, okay, I could see this game maybe being up there was around right after the Eagles win, was Steelers and Rams in 14, or Patriots Panthers in 2003. I don't know. It's such a subjective ranking as to where this game would have gone. But if they had stuck that landing, if we had gone to overtime, or if we had seen the Eagles try to make one last great drive after a Chiefs field goal, if they get to 4th down, it kind of made me feel like I missed something right at the end of that game, because I was enjoying it for the first 3 and 3 quarters.
That's exactly what it was. You have this almost empty feeling as a casual football fan, or just a fan of football in general, because we didn't get the ending that was, you don't want to say expected, but that the game was leading you up to believe was going to come, right? With how many penalties were not thrown in that game, to see a play like that ultimately determine the outcome, it hurts. And obviously every play in the Super Bowl, every play in every single game matters, but I'm with you, because I personally think this was going to potentially, if it went into overtime, or even if you let Jalen Hurts get the ball back and they're down 3 and they drive into field goal range, or the Chiefs score and the Eagles are driving down to score a touchdown, they get within the 20, you're on the edge of your seat, if not standing up. Obviously, Eagles fans, Chiefs fans, people that bet on the game, and just people who like good football games. But we didn't get that. So I feel like there is that little void now that we're missing, but it was still a really good game. I mean, I think the entirety of the game was better than last year's between the Rams and the Bengals. There was just so much suspense. There was the Eagles and Chiefs going back and forth, and then the Eagles with a 10-point lead at the half, and then the Chiefs outscoring the Eagles 24-11. And I think that's my biggest thing, is how do you let the Chiefs outscore you 24-11 in the second half when you knew Mahomes was gimpy, even though he didn't look like it in the second half?
Yeah, I don't know. And there was that whole thing at the end of the game where it was like right in the post game when they were talking about, I think it was when Mahomes and Kelsey were being talked at in the post game, and how it wasn't something exactly they said, but it had the cadence of the Chiefs were looked at as underdogs all year. And I kept thinking to myself, the Chiefs being underdogs doesn't sound like the most realistic take, but the Eagles were the newer team. They were the hotter team throughout most of the year. So everyone just kind of, I think more people kind of maybe latched onto them because Philadelphia was a more attractive team for the first time in a while. And you're comparing it to the Chiefs, who are there year in and year out. The Chiefs are in that Patriots 2000s phase now, and I'm going to have to deal with it every single year pretty much, to where I didn't have that feeling for Brady, and now I have my Brady for the generations before me, because it's just going to be the Chiefs year in, year out. And we'll get to later on in the show our 2 early picks for next year, which will probably be not much different from what we just saw last night. Any final thoughts before we head to break on what happened? We'll get into some of it in segment 2, but any game centric thoughts, Mitch?
No, not really. I thought it was a very, very entertaining game. The only thing I'll say is, and I heard this take this morning, I wasn't sure how to feel about it. The Chiefs were in the white uniforms, obviously. Mm-hmm. Somebody said that you need to be smarter as an Eagles defender and wear white gloves, because Bradbury wearing all black gloves probably made it a little more obvious for the penalty to be thrown. I don't know how I feel about that. I thought it was a very hot take, and I thought, well, there's a point to that. And at the same time, I thought that's not ultimately what
No, no.
If somebody
Just
gets
don't-
held, it's pretty obvious.
As much as you want to win and stop that receiver, don't put your hands on him to the point where that call can be made. And I give
Exactly.
Bradbury a lot of credit. He of all people could have easily not been as humble as he was in the locker room, and I give him a lot of credit for that response that he had. That's it. We'll go over to segment 2 right after these commercial messages. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
Buying a home has never been so affordable with record low interest rates. Hartzler's Quality Housing is ready to put over 40 years of experience to work for you. Family owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's has a wide selection of model homes on site with a knowledgeable team to help make your new home a reality. Open 6 days a week. Visit them off I-77 in Dover or online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve
Wendy's
the best.
without the Wendy's
That
app
Ferris
is like
Chevrolet,
Nugs
Buick,
without the
Cadillac,
sauce.
Toyota, that's
Or a
what
Frosty
you get.
without the
We
fries.
consider you
Or a hamburger
the customer
without the
to be
fresh
part
beef.
of our family. Anybody can make
Get the app
promises,
to order ahead,
but when you
order
visit
delivery,
Ferris,
earn free
you get
food,
the
and
Ferris
get
deal
app-exclusive
from a
offers.
Ferris wheel.
One app.
So if you're
all the
looking for a
Wendy's.
car, truck, or van,
Offer for a limited
think
time at
Ferris.
participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
You invest a lot in your home and vehicle purchases. Van Nostrand Young and Associates
You
want you to
deserve the
feel
best.
secure
And at
should
Ferris
anything
Chevrolet,
happen to those
Buick, Cadillac,
investments.
Toyota,
We
that's
partner
what
with
you
providers
get.
like Grange Insurance and
consider
other
you
industry
the
leaders to
customer
be
to
sure
be
you're
part of
presented with the
our
most
family.
complete coverage to
Anybody
fit
can
your
make
needs.
promises, but
Because
when
we're
you
not
visit
only here
Ferris,
to protect
you
the
get
items
the
you
Ferris
invest in,
deal
we're
from a
here to
Ferris
protect
wheel.
your future
So
as
if you're
well.
looking
Call
for a
Van
car,
Nostrand
truck,
Young
or
Insurance
van,
in North Canton at
think
330-497-1867.
We all have
You invest
206
a lot
things in
your
common.
home and
Our
vehicle
bones
purchases.
keep us up and moving.
Van Nostrand
And
Young
we at
and
Cleveland Clinic
Associates
Union
want you to
Hospital
feel
care about
secure
every
should
single one of
anything happen
them.
to those
From the
investments.
tip of your
We
finger
partner
to a
with
brand new
providers
hip,
like Grange
our
Insurance
orthopedic
and other
experts will
industry
keep you going
leaders to
while
be
keeping
sure
you
you're
safe.
presented with the
For
most
every
complete
break
coverage
and
to fit your
breakthrough,
needs.
for every
Because
bone
we're
and
not
joint,
only here
for
to
every
protect the
care in the
items you
world.
invest in.
Get the
We're
care
here
you
to
need
protect
when
your
and where you
future
need it.
as
Visit
well.
Call Van Nostrand Young
unionhospital.org.
Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like
We all
Nugs
have
without the sauce.
206 things in
Or a
common.
Frosty
Our
without the
bones
fries.
keep us up and moving.
Or a
And we
hamburger
at Cleveland
without
Clinic
the
Union
fresh
Hospital
beef.
care about every single one of them. From the
Get the
tip
app
of your
to order
finger
ahead,
to a
order
brand new
delivery,
hip,
earn
our
free food,
orthopedic
and
experts
get
will keep you going
app-exclusive
while
offers.
keeping you safe.
One app
For
all
every
the
break and
Wendy's.
breakthrough, for every
Offer
bone
for a
and
limited
joint,
time at
for
participating
every
Wendy's.
care in
Terms
the
apply.
world.
App registration
Get the care
required.
you
Fresh
need
beef available
when
in
and where
contiguous
you need
U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
Visit unionhospital.org.
Are you
Five
trying
Auto
to
Sales,
increase your
located
speed,
on West High
quickness,
Avenue in New
vertical
Philadelphia
length,
and
agility?
Cleveland Avenue in
If
Canton,
so,
is a used car
NSC
dealership
Sport
committed to getting
Performance
financing
is
for
you.
everyone. We give
NSC
every
trains
customer that walks in our
athletes
showrooms
ages
a prime
5
buying
through
experience,
pro.
no matter their
NSC
credit score
designs
or
each
financial
program
situation.
specific to
Current
the
inventory
athlete's
can be
needs,
viewed
goals,
at
and sports.
www.wefinancenow.com. Check out our Facebook pages for the most up-to-date information about upcoming events and promotions happening at Vive Auto Sales.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Mitch Spinell and Mitchell Bala here. I have the tweet here, Mitch, that apparently was deleted by ESPN. You sent me of the picture of Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. I think that's more so they didn't realize, well, they weren't expecting Jalen Hurts to have that good a game to where he easily would have been MVP if the Eagles would have won. So it may not have been the best look to just have him look like he completely dominated. He was dominated by Mahomes because Mahomes arguably didn't play that much better.
No, not at all. I'm happy to see they deleted it because I just think that if Mahomes would have had his stat line and Hurts would have had the similar stat line, but had a couple turnovers, couple picks or something where that's realistically how the Chiefs got back in it. Yes, the scoop and score off the Hurts fumble was huge, but like I said, Hurts then came back, delivered a scoring drive for the Eagles. He made up for his mistake. I just personally felt that with the season that Jalen Hurts has had, with all the doubt and the haters, and even somebody like Stephen A. Smith, a very, very big media personality, who said Hurts will never be, a franchise quarterback and shouldn't be a starting quarterback. That just, it's slightly disrespectful for the MVP runner-up to the MVP. Now, if you wanted to have something where Hurts is in the background or something, yes, but to where it almost looks like Mahomes is stepping over him, Hurts outplayed Mahomes statistically.
I think
but
so.
I know the Chiefs won, and obviously Mahomes got Super Bowl MVP. So I am happy they took it down. I think it admits that, they were wrong in posting that, and they probably got a lot of backlash from both the NFL, possibly from maybe teams, from other media outlets. But there's a now I understand why you couldn't find it at first, because once I went back to find it, it was deleted. But I'm glad you at least pulled it up for the viewers to see, because I personally didn't find that as a good graphic.
Yeah, Hurts set some records last night. He had most yards for a quarterback rushing in a Super Bowl and most rushing touchdowns for a QB, which, when you think about it, it really is that, it makes sense, because most starting quarterbacks in the Super Bowl history have been pocket passers.
Yeah.
The guys like Randall Cunningham and Michael Vick never made the Super Bowl. And even if you were to say somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who can run, he's not known for his running compared to his passing. The only quarterback I can think before last night that I think could really be labeled as that type of QB was Cam Newton. And Cam Newton didn't have a great Super Bowl 50 against Denver, but he set some records. The other guy who also can run wins the MVP.
He set records, and he had an octopus. Do you know what that is, Mitch?
Oh, I just learned what this was. I was on a betting site. A touchdown and a 2-point conversion right after that. Is that what it really is called now? An octopus?
Yeah, same player. So he rushed.
Oh, same player. Okay.
He ran in the touchdown for 6 points, and then he ran in the 2-point conversion for another 2. That's 8. That is called an octopus now, in terms of how you word betting or props you can bet on betting sites.
Yeah.
I know some of my buddies had that as a bet last night, and I thought, you'd never see that. But of course, Jalen Hurts delivered in his historic and record-breaking performance with an octopus.
No, I gave him a lot of props for that, because after those 2 straight Kansas City touchdowns, one of which had what's his name 5 yards away from taking it back, that would have been the longest punt in Super Bowl history. I am very surprised by that. Kadarius Toney bringing it all the way back. That was a heck of a run. But no, I give him credit for that. And of course, they just left a little bit too much time left. So yeah, but then that leads us over to the topic that we had in terms of, it's one day after the season. And I always kind of get annoyed when I see these little notifications pop up on my phone from the major outlets like ESPN or CBS Sports or whatever. The way too early Super Bowl or NFL picks for next year, sports picks next year, because you don't know what's going to happen in an off season. Right. There's so many things that go into an off season, even though many teams are remaining active during this time, but players are going to switch teams. Coaches are going to switch teams. Players are going to retire. Players are going to be drafted. So many factors are going to be changed throughout the course of the summer leading into the fall that it's near impossible to really choose who's going to be back here again next year. I would say, though, that at the rate that these two teams are at, I could easily see a rematch between them next year. Now, if you had to say, well, you can only pick one team to get back to this game, I would take Kansas City, just based on the level of talent you have in the AFC. But compared to them, the Chiefs and the Bills, maybe a fourth wild card team will come in there in the future. But with Philadelphia, there's a number of teams that can still be in that mix in the NFC, even though Philadelphia was far and away the best team in the conference this year. So I'll just leave it to you, Mitch. Who do you think can be your picks for next year at this point?
Well, I'm just going to first state the Chiefs can't use this underdog. Nobody picked us to be there, even though they were second preseason odds this past season, the AFC. They are the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year at plus 600 on FanDuel. That is one of the apps I use. I know other people use different apps. And Mahomes is also the favorite to win MVP next year. So I don't want to hear, people doubted Mahomes, because you can only use that for so long. Much like you heard the Kirby Smart, people thought Georgia were going to be 7-6 this year.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure somebody thought they were going to be 7-6 this year. So I'm not here for that. But
can I say something too? There was a big thing where also, and I was part of this wave as well, where people thought that the Chiefs were going to get usurped by teams like the Chargers in their own division, let alone the AFC. So maybe they were thinking, oh, well, they're doubting us now. We've been here for so long. They're starting to bring us down for no reason. People had their reasons. Okay. There were other good teams in the NFL this year. You guys just happen to be the one on top, but sorry, go ahead with your picks.
No, you're absolutely right there. And so obviously, I texted you saying I think we should do this just because it's always fun to do hot takes like this. I don't know how you can say the Chiefs won't be back. I mean, as long as Andy Reid's the head coach, as long as Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, and we'll say 70% healthy, and they have this guy named Travis Kelce, Mitch, which at this point, he's really starting to make a run for the greatest tight end of all time. He's definitely probably top 3 in my opinion, and that's no disrespect to some of the all-time greats, notably like Tony Gonzalez, who's in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Chiefs out of the AFC next year. I'll take the Chiefs. I'm not going to take the Eagles. The Eagles have a lot of key free agents coming up, Mitch.
Sure.
And not to mention there's rumors that Jason Kelce may retire. He is older. He does play, obviously, a little more physical position than Travis Kelce. And he's a little bit older. He is older than Travis. So between that and I believe it was Boston Scott, I believe all 3 running backs, if not at least 2 of them, are free agents for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is probably going to demand this contract here in the next year or 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you wouldn't pay him. And we're experiencing that now as Browns fans after getting Deshaun Watson and seeing what's going to happen now with players and having to cut a couple guys for casualties. And you always hear about the Super Bowl hangover. Now, this year, it was actually the team that won the Super Bowl last year that was in the hangover mode in the Rams.
Yeah.
But they also were decimated by injuries because typically it's the loser who has a hangover. I'm not taking the Eagles to make the Super Bowl next year. The Niners are at plus 900. That is the 3rd best odds on the board. You have a team, to me, Mitch, like the Rams, plus 3,000. McVay's back as head coach.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford's still there. Cooper Kupp should be back. They should be healthier. Cam Akers finally broke out late in the season. We'll have to see what they do with him because we know that there was times that him and McVay butted heads. I'm not taking the Cowboys. To me, that's just a way to burn your money. I'd rather go spend money and do something, more enjoyable. The Niners, I think, are the other team I'm looking at because their defense is so great. But what is Trey Lance going to be? I mean, there's real doubt that Brock Purdy even plays next year. And even if he does, Mitch, that is typically when you could see defenses having enough film on somebody, be able to make an adjustment and stop somebody like him. I'm between the Rams and the 49ers to come out of the NFC next year and play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. And as much as defense helps, I think having offensive weapons at the same time helps because the Rams have some very, very great defensive players. They have a future Hall of Famer in Aaron Donald. If he retired right now, he'd go to the Hall of Fame once eligible. Jalen Ramsey's still a top corner in the game. They signed a couple guys this past offseason. I think I lean towards the Rams, if I'm being honest. But I would say I'm between the Rams and the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl next year. And the reason I can't pick the Niners is because I don't know what Trey Lance is. And if it's not Trey Lance, what does Brock Purdy look like? Because it definitely seems this time that Jimmy Garoppolo will not be back.
I was going to say with San Francisco, that's my team. That's the closest that we have to a legitimate contender alongside Philadelphia. And you could argue that if San Francisco had their starting quarterback situation filled out by that NFC Championship game, they might have had an edge because Philadelphia, as good as they played, wasn't that miles ahead better than San Francisco. But yeah, the NFC really has maybe 1 or 2 contenders there. I could see the Giants being a sleeper pick next year, even because they had such a major improvement. But again, it just depends on if that offense can perform as well as it did down the course of the season. In the AFC, I'll just run through these teams real quick. AFC, you still got the Bills and the Bengals. Other than that, you can maybe look at a wild card team like the Jaguars if they can get back, the Titans if they can recover, even though I don't know if they can. Baltimore, if you get Lamar back for 1 more year, maybe you make a last ditch push, but I don't know. And then the Chargers, maybe you'll get something with this new coach, but it's really just Kansas City's AFC world right now. It's Kansas City's role right now, and the rest of the AFC is just living in it.
I'm glad you mentioned the new head coach the offensive coordinator for the Chargers in Moore going there. There's 2 teams, and if you are betting, please bet responsibly, obviously, 1-800-GAMBLER if you have a gambling addiction or problem. There's 2 teams, Mitch, in the AFC that I think there's significant value that you could place money on right now. Okay. One of them, I'm going to sound crazy, has a very good defense. They were thought to have a very good offense. This year was just a complete and utter disappointment with chaos in Denver. But Denver at plus 3,500. We know Sean Payton is there now. We know he's already implemented some rules. I don't know if you've been keeping track on some of the things, like Russ's quarterback coach won't be allowed in there, which I honestly had no idea he was there. That seems extremely odd, but we also know Russell Wilson, after going to Denver, seems like he's an odd person. Mitch, the Las Vegas Raiders are plus 4,000. I only say that because Aaron Rodgers just a week and a half ago was very vocal about going to the Raiders. He was also had a former teammate in Davante Adams being very vocal, saying, well, I'm already looking for a house for Aaron Rodgers on my street. Mitch, if Aaron Rodgers goes to Vegas, I think they could potentially be a sleeper pick. I know their defense sucks. I know they're stuck in cap hell pretty much, but Aaron Rodgers is good enough to overcome some of those obstacles, much like we've seen for the most part in Green Bay. I know he's only ever been to one Super Bowl, and yes, he's quote unquote choked, but that's another team I look at that has a lot of value there. And if you put that bet in now and they get Rodgers, you look like a genius, which is why I've only planned on putting a few bucks on it. There is the possibility Rodgers stays with Green Bay. We'll find out. I think he's in day one right now of his 4-day darkness retreat. So we'll see what he comes out of the darkness retreat thinking. I would say if he stays in Green Bay, that's probably the third team for me in the NFC if they make some adjustments. But the Broncos and Raiders, to me, Mitch, are the sleeper teams in the AFC, much like the Giants are a sleeper team in the NFC to you. And that's another team I had here that I thought could be a sleeper team, because that's a team that should have a lot of draft capital, should have a lot of money to go out and spend. And then another team that I haven't looked at yet, and I'm pulling them up now, the Jets at plus 2,500. I personally think Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets or he's going to the Raiders. So I think those are two teams that if you have a little bit of money, Wendy's biggie bag, 4 for 4, whatever, throw that money on there. A bet like that could ultimately be huge if Aaron Rodgers ends up at one of those two destinations.
No, that's fair. I could see that. And of all the teams that I think could make him run for Rodgers, should he ask for a trade from Green Bay, that's that I'd put my money on that particular team. I think it'd be a decent fit. I think the offense could do wonders there, even if the defense couldn't hold a candle to the rest of the league. It would be interesting to see an organization that almost thrives on chaos at times bring in some more chaos potentially. And I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers would completely bring it to shambles, but it would just be the headlines that would generate from that sort of relationship. It's sort of like, when a, ex unique athlete, or not unique, what's the term? Curious athlete, joins some random team.
I agree. I completely agree. And even Aaron Rodgers is plus, I have MVP odds for next year. I was looking ahead at that. And of course, every single quarterback in the NFL is listed on that sheet. I was looking to see if Nick Chubb was on there. Myles Garrett is on there. He's plus 10,000 along with somebody like Micah Parsons, who I think is only going to get better. Derrick Henry was the only running back I found out on the futures MVP betting list for FanDuel as of now. I'm thinking maybe that changes as the offseason goes on, but Derrick Henry's plus 10,000. But
did you see Nick Chubb's tweet 15 minutes into the Super Bowl?
Oh, I sure did. And I loved it.
Loved it. I mean, it was just him hopefully getting back to work, just hoping he's getting it done. And yeah, that's what Browns fandom is, just hoping during the offseason, even with no first round pick this coming year.
My last thought, or my last question to you, actually, because I feel like we have to talk about it. Commercials were, there was a couple I really liked. There was one I loved that I don't want to go into because this is a family oriented show. The E-Trade commercial, I think in the first quarter with all the babies, was hilarious, but
that was fun.
More importantly, halftime show thoughts.
Pretty solid show. Rihanna coming out, playing all of her greatest hits, apparently letting it leak that she's having a second child on the way. So congratulations to her. And then it was confirmed. It's funny how some people were disappointed by the lack of guest appearances we had there, because we've gotten so accustomed to it. But there were some songs that I think would have been primed with a special guest. Although she didn't play the one that I really wanted. I wanted her to play Disturbia a little bit.
Yeah, Disturbia, Please Don't Stop the Music. There was a lot of other Rihanna is somebody that I think people forgot, Mitch. She has an unlimited inventory of bangers. She has some straight fire in terms of music, and she could have gone on for so much longer than she did. I honestly thought when all the lights, sound, and music started playing, I thought Kanye was going to pop out, and I wasn't sure.
Too soon. It was too soon.
I agree. I was a little nervous because, Kanye, we never know what to expect with him.
Well, yeah.
I was also kind of disappointed that Jay-Z wasn't there. I thought there was a real possibility he would be there. He was in LA on Tuesday night when LeBron broke the record. I thought that's a short flight. Plus you have to rehearse, a couple days before. Maybe he was going to be there, but Run This Town, phenomenal song by her. That's one of the best songs that she's on, in my opinion. I'm not old enough. Neither of us are old enough. And yes, you can go back and watch on YouTube, but I pulled up the list of halftime performers. And you mentioned more custom to guess. Last year you had Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, and Mary J. Blige. 2020, you had Shakira, J-Lo, Bad Bunny, J Balvin, Emmy Muniz, Maroon 5, Travis Scott, Big Boy. I mean, the list of guest appearances for Super Bowl shows are awesome. There was one that said Rihanna's a top 5 halftime show. And for me personally, in what I've seen in my life, absolutely. From what I've
probably for us,
years of life. Obviously, I don't remember watching Prince and him singing Purple Rain when it was actually raining, which is awesome.
Actually do. Yeah.
That him and Michael Jackson, I think there's really no one to argue that they're 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
But I do want to ask. There was people out there I saw on Twitter last night roasting my man Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers from the 08 Super Bowl halftime show. I thought that was a really good halftime show.
So that's fine. I think that was just one of those. That was in an era where the NFL was really struggling to find relevant artists, so they would just come in and have a band do their greatest hits, even though they hadn't had a hit in years. So I kind of got that feeling, but I can't say whether or not it was a bad show because I don't really remember it. Maybe it's because I don't remember that it wasn't a great show. I don't know.
I remember that, but to your point, I mean, there was somebody like U2 back in 2002. At the time may have been good, but
later.
And so what I'm trying to figure out now is, and so the 2002 Super Bowl halftime show would have been for the 2001-2002 season.
Right.
That makes sense. So because I thought Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were the Giants and Patriots Super Bowl, and then I got caught off guard with the year and then remembered the Super Bowl is the next calendar year, but still for the previous calendar season. No, I thought Rihanna was amazing. I love Rihanna. I think her music's phenomenal. It's the only music I have actually played today. And I love that effect that artists have on us like this. I still remember Maroon 5. I was lucky enough to see them here in Canton at the Hall of Fame enshrinement. And they made the pitch before they went off stage of, we want to do the Super Bowl halftime show. And after I watched them live, it's all I listened to for like a week. They performed at halftime of the Super Bowl. It's all I listened to for the next couple of days. Rihanna, I thought killed it, especially now that it's confirmed that she was and is pregnant. I love her. I love that woman.
No, I remember. It's funny you bring up the Maroon 5 one. That's the one I remember people hating on the most, mainly a couple reasons. Number one, people didn't like Maroon 5 and Travis Scott together. Number two was, you might know this as well, there was a big push right before that Super Bowl to have a certain song included because a certain creator of a cartoon show passed away, and it was very short notice. And I gave the NFL credit for at least acknowledging it, because for those of you who are listening at home who don't know what's going on, the creator of SpongeBob, Steven Hillenbrand, I think his name was, he died like a week or two before the Chiefs Niners Super Bowl. So then there was this big online push to get the song Sweet Victory from that one episode of SpongeBob, which just ends with an epic rock ballad for no reason other than to just do it. And everybody wanted that. And then right as Maroon 5 got done performing, they had a little interstitial where the SpongeBob characters introduced Travis Scott. And when me and my friends in college saw that, we exploded at the TV going, oh my God, it's going to happen. And then it didn't happen. The song didn't happen. But I thought, oh, it's kind of cool. They just acknowledge it. And then people online after the game didn't like that because they just half-assed it according to them. But I don't know.
It was electric.
Yeah. You brought up commercials. As far as the one that I really liked, I don't know if it aired during the game last night. There was one for Samuel Adams where it was about an alternate, a brighter Boston. I don't know if you saw this one, where it was the Red Sox and Yankees fans like laughing together. Kevin Garnett teaching about how to love, and the mob is recycled. I thought that one was funny.
That was good.
I thought the Caddyshack one was funny with all the little references. The Popcorners ad was kind of fun with the Breaking Bad guys. There was the one where Crown Royal was, praising all the things Canada brought to us, including football. And I put up a clip from Family Guy of Peter just looking at the camera going, Canada sucks. I'm the only person that thought that was funny. And then, of course, you had a bunch of trailers last night. The best trailer, some of them were real trailers, and the other ones were just like, hey, here's 30 seconds of a movie. Go online and check out the rest of it, you dope. Best one's probably The Flash, because that movie's going to be insane, just knowing what we see now. They also had a trailer for Air, which is about the Air Jordan movie with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Ben Affleck also in the Dunkin' Donuts ad that was pretty good. And then after that, it's got to be between Guardians 3 and Indiana Jones 5. But I don't know. It's going to be a big year at the cinema for a number of series.
Who is the Air documentary that Nike put out? Who's that about?
Who's that about? I don't know if you know this. There was a guy it's about a guy who was drafted 3rd overall in the 1984 draft. There was a company, a little known startup by the time by the name of Nike that was trying to find a really great name to put behind its signature shoe. Because I don't know if you knew this back then, Nike was not a big name in the basketball industry. It was Adidas and it was Converse, and that was it. And then Nike decided, hey, we're going to focus on basketball. We're going to do something that's never been done. We're going to get this little known basketball player from North Carolina to be the guy behind our shoe brand. And we're going to give him his own brand with his own logo that looks like this. And we're just going to take this risk and see what happens. And then, all things considered, now 30 some odd years later, they're making a movie about it.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know. I find it interesting that the trailer dropped not even 2 full days after that LeBron James guy.
That's what your whole thing was building up to.
Just weird.
That's the whole thing. Oh my God.
Bizarre.
This movie's been in production for 2 years.
I'm just saying, I just find it a little funny that, that wasn't the premiere of the trailer last night. It was put out there, not even 2 full days, but hey, you know what? Credit to them. It's going to be a great film. I'm definitely going to watch it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not going to watch it, but just find the timing of it pretty suspicious. That's
MJ Day was suspicious. This one I can give him a pass. All right.
The Last Dance documentary being interviewed or MJ putting it into works the same day as the parade of the Cavs in 16 is also suspicious. So I don't know, 3rd time's charm. I'm not gonna say anything else.
It was suspicious, but it was one of the 5 best things that ESPN has ever produced. Okay, so when we come back, we will go over some more topics here. We'll be back right after this.
The Furby Electric Supply Company has bright ideas for your home. Save money by converting to energy-efficient electrical products or add ambiance with beautiful lighting features. It begins with a professional consultation and a visit to the Furby Lighting Showroom. Then certified Furby contractors complete your project right and on time. Since 1934, 4 generations have built a reputation of quality and trust, and they offer emergency services too. Just visit Furby.com. That's F-U-R-B-A-Y. The Furby Electric Supply Company.
You asked for it and we listened. Buckeye Career Center is now offering Certified Nail Technician as an adult education program. This 216-hour course begins in November and will run Tuesday through Thursday evenings from 5 to 9 p.m. Learn manicures, pedicures, infection control, salon operations, and more. Other part-time certification courses starting this fall include phlebotomy and welding. Call 330-339-2288 to register or visit BuckeyeCareerCenter.org for more information.
If you're looking for a new or pre-owned car or truck, why not see the Parkway Auto Group? Parkway is a special group of automotive experts with 8 brands to satisfy your needs. Come see the difference at the Parkway Auto Group on Commercial Parkway in Dover. 8 brands and 1 family. It's Parkway Auto Group.
Fall is in the air and part-time career enhancement courses at Buckeye Career Center are on the horizon. Registration is now open for Introduction to Beekeeping, Basic Small Engine Repair, and Sign Language. These part-time offerings run on Tuesday evenings and begin in November. Let Buckeye Career Center help you learn a new skill or advance your current skill set. Call 330-339-2288 for more information or to reserve your seat in one of these or our other part-time classes.
matter. Everyone plays a part. We all have a role. Each of us can make a difference. You do matter, and the best way to have a positive impact is to pay it forward. With each of us helping one another to cope, feel better, and know that we belong. Pass on the positivity today. Tell someone else they matter too. Alt Care.
Alt Care, Alt Care. Where you matter.
We all have 206 things in common. Our bones keep us up and moving. And we at Cleveland Clinic Union Hospital care about every single one of them. From the tip of your finger to a brand new hip, our orthopedic experts will keep you going while keeping you safe. For every break and breakthrough, for every bone and joint, for every care in the world. Get the care you need when and where you need it. Visit unionhospital.org.
Are you trying to increase your speed, quickness, vertical leap, and agility? If so, NST Sports Performance is for you. NST trains athletes ages 5 through pro. NST designs each program specific to the athlete's needs, goals, and sports. For more, visit nstsports.com. Locations in North Canton and New Philadelphia. It's nstsports.com.
Back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show, Mitch Spinell, Mitchell Bella. Mitch, it's time to head over back now to high school sports action talk. As we get back to it here, we have the end or the near end of both of our regular seasons in Stark and Tuscarawas County. Tournament play is upon us. It's actually started in the girls' side, which we'll get to in a little bit. But for right now, I want to stay on the boys' side because we have our Federal League champions, and I want to hear your side of it because the Jackson Polar Bears will share the title with the Green Bulldogs after the Bulldogs beat Glen Oak, who led for much of this season, Mitch, in the Federal League standings. Green ends up beating them on Friday night, and Jackson beats McKinley to split. Jackson gets its first Federal League title since 2019. I believe Green winning for the first time in over a decade, but congratulations to both the Polar Bears and the Bulldogs for pulling it out this season.
Bet you could argue the two best teams in the Federal League. Obviously, with them being co-champions, that is the case. Obviously, you mentioned Glen Oak leading for most of the year. I went to the field house on Friday night to watch Jackson McKinley. Obviously, as a Jackson alum, there was that rooting interest for me, but also just to see if Jackson could win for the first time in 4+ years at the field house. And it wasn't even close. Jackson, Mitch, played lights out. They were just, I mean, you see right there in one of the articles you wrote, Monterrubio, 21 points for Jackson. All these starters for Jackson just had a huge game. It started with Anthony Fuline, the junior point guard for Jackson, Mitch. The way he shot the ball, there is no doubt in my mind, and this is going to be tough because I'm probably going to contradict myself here in a second, but there's no doubt in my mind that if Jackson plays the way they did at the field house, they can win their district. Now, it's going to be tough because they would realistically, if you're going on the seeds advancing by number, would face Stowe, who was the number 1 overall seed in the 3 super districts. But Jackson getting the first Federal League title since 2019, that's big, especially at a school like Jackson. There's always, you don't want to say expectation, but you know, you're supposed to win the Fed. That's always your number 1 goal in any athletic sport at Jackson. They led by 21 points. Mitch Finnefrock in the first quarter hitting a couple big threes, but the way Jackson played, Mitch, it's going to be hard to beat them if they play like that come tournament time. On the flip side for Green, what a game. I actually had somebody there that was texting me updates and I was hearing about it, and I got the video of the last play with Jarrett Taylor being fouled for Green with less than 1 second to play, misses the first, makes the second, puts Green up 50-49. Glen Oak had 0.8 of a second to get a shot off, and it was a half-court heave that wasn't close. Green, with how the season started for them, Mitch, let's keep in mind, let's go all the way back to when we had Coach Mark Kinsley on the show. This was a team that had their first game canceled. This is a team that had to open up their season on the road at Jackson in Federal League play. And the result of that game was Jackson blowing Green out. But you knew that was not what Green was going to be. And they proved that by not only beating Jackson then at Green, but also being able to run the course. They dropped a few Federal League games, but that's just the Federal League, right? Everybody can beat everybody on any given night. And Green put together big stretch runs throughout the season, knocking off Federal League teams, getting back to the top, and them and Jackson shared the Federal League crown. And what makes this so much more interesting, Mitch, the tournament for the boys starts next week. Jackson and Green could meet in the district semifinal at Alliance High School. The two co-champions of the Federal League could square off in the district semifinal. And that is going to be insane if it happens. I would expect that gym to be sold out. Obviously, both teams have to get there first. Obviously, this is craziness ensues here. We already saw it in the girls, which I want to make sure we talk about before we send it to our next break in the final segment. But I'm already excited knowing that's a potential matchup. But congrats to Green. Congrats to Jackson. Obviously, I have a ton of respect for Coach Mark Kinsley over at Green. He's a phenomenal person, a phenomenal coach, just a better human. And obviously, always happy to see Jackson be able to clinch the Federal League title. But they were the two best teams. Jackson got over the hump this year in terms of beating McKinley. We had alluded to that early in January, Mitch. That was a team the senior class had never beat in the 3 years prior. They beat them twice. And realistically, if you would have said, hey, they're going to blow them out one time and have a close game, I would have thought they'd blow them out at Jackson, have a close game at the field house, but it was the opposite. And I just can't say enough about the performance from Kyle Monterrubio, Mitch. This is a sophomore for Jackson that I personally thought, covering the team and calling all their home games, there was a lot of expectations for a sophomore. The last one that really delivered would have been Kyle Young at Jackson. And obviously when you're 6'7" and you can bring the ball up the court and shoot the three, I get it. When you're someone like Monterrubio, who's 6'1", a little different, Mitch, this kid has so much potential. And I don't want to put expectations on the kid because that's not fair to somebody like that. And obviously you need to stay healthy, but this is a kid that, if he's healthy, is going to be a problem for the next 2 years in the Federal League. And same with Green. I mean, Jarrett Taylor, Rollison, Bundalo. I mean, these are all players that come back. These are two teams, Mitch, and Glen Oak concluded those three teams should be at the top of the Federal League again next year, battling it out for who the Federal League champion is. And obviously Glen Oak falls one game short of the title. Mitch, preseason, I told you, McKinley, I thought was the team to beat just off the sheer numbers and returning experience coming back for head coach Vlahovic. These three teams now are going to be a force to be reckoned with, not only next year, but now in the tournament. But Green's going to play Lake, and we'll dive into those matchups next week, I'm sure. But I am so excited for the boys' side. And I know you had a phenomenal weekend in the IVC.
Yeah, well, the IVC Showcase on the boys' side happened this Saturday at Claymont, and many of the games seem to be going as scheduled for the South Division. The South went 5-0 in their first matchups against their northern counterparts. Now, some of the games were closer than others. The first couple of ones, you had Ridgewood beating New Comerstown pretty handily. New Comerstown, unfortunately, ending the regular season a goose egg in the win column. Claymont christening their hosting of the IVC Showcase, the win over Conotton Valley. Matthew Jackson having a breakout game in that with 14 points. You also had Tusky Valley beating East Canton, while Highland got down early against Central Catholic and then just stormed the rest of the way. There was a close one in the third to last game between Indian Valley and Strasburg. Indian Valley, one of the highest scoring teams in the league. Strasburg, a very good defensive-minded school. And the Braves got out to a lead at halftime. Strasburg cut it down to 2 early in the third. Gage Moore, who is one of the top players for Strasburg this season, got hot late in the game, but he was knocked out of the game with an injury, and then Indian Valley just took over from there. And then you had Garaway beating Buckeye Trail, and then Malvern salvaging the day for the North with the first North victory at the Showcase since 2020. That game was a 64-51 final over Sandy Valley. We saw a very close game the previous Tuesday with Malvern beat Garaway in overtime to hand the Pirates their first and only home loss of this season. So Malvern really making a statement here. They are now 20-1 on the season, 12-0 in IVC North play, 13-0 against 14-0 against overall opponents from the IVC South. And you got guys like Jalen Barino performing again, 18 points, 10 of 13 from the free throw line. He got to the line so many times as he got into the paint. Mitch Minor, 15 points, 3 3-pointers. Dylan Phillips was our player of the game that night. He was a 14-point shooter, 4 3-pointers, one of those sneakily good scores for Malvern. And it's a very impressive victory for a Malvern squad that's going to look very dangerous in the upcoming tournament play.
I'm excited to see where Malvern goes in this tournament because they have had a great season. Obviously, you mentioned some of the names there, Mitch Miner being one of them. That is a team, Mitch, that for a couple times now has seen their season cut short in terms of the postseason, not being able to get over a hump against a couple teams. But this is still a team that has experience returning from last year. Obviously, you know them more than I do. That is a team that I wouldn't want to play, in their district. And I'm excited to see how far Malvern can go. That's definitely a team that I've kept tabs on a little bit. That's down in the IVC, and a team that I'm very intrigued with. That's for sure.
No doubt. And the girls actually start sectional play today. A couple of teams starting off in my area, at least. You have Minerva taking on John Glenn, Buckeye Trail taking on Ridgewood in the Division 3 section, while in Division 4, you have Hannibal River taking on Bridgeport. The Minerva John Glenn game is Division 2. Now, your side has already had a couple of games already under the way. Division 1 Northeast 1 bracket, McKinley all over Euclid, 48-6, which is a very rare score for a basketball game. And of course, Hoover will take on Menor tonight. The Vikings will take on Menor. Hoover is a 19 seed, so they'll be on the road for this game.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the McKinley Euclid score. McKinley did not allow more than 2 points in a quarter in that contest. Really, it was never in doubt after the first quarter.
So basically, like one of their quarters was scoreless, is what you're saying.
Basically,
yeah.
Mitch, there was a big upset in the girls' bracket already in sectional semifinals. It was in Northeast District 3. That is the Ravenna district, which the Jackson girls are in. Mm-hmm. And it was thought, just going by seeding, which obviously you can't do, but if you were just moving the better seed across the bracket in terms of what you'd expect to happen, there was a thought Jackson was going to play Lake, a team that beat Jackson twice in the regular season. That will not be happening, Mitch. The 24th seeded Hudson Lady Explorers from Hudson High School knocked off the number 8 seed Lake Blue Streaks on Saturday at Lake High School, 47-45. Hudson outscored Lake 13-7 in the fourth quarter. And that is just a game that I don't think anybody expected it, but that is the type of chaos that we have to be ready for now in terms of high school playoffs. I mean, you're going to see teams that are severely underseeded, potentially overseeded. Yes, I know the record indicates what they are in terms of a seed, but that doesn't always come back to show you how good or how bad a team's season really was because of the type of league they played in. Here's Hudson now, Mitch. They will take on Louisville at Louisville this Thursday in the sectional championship. The winner of that game will face the winner of Nordonia and Jackson in the district semifinal on Tuesday, February 21st at 8:00 at Ravenna High School. So already we see a big upset in the girls' side of things. We'll see what Hoover can do at Menor tonight. That is going to be a very tough task for Hoover. They're a very young team, another team that had a first-year head coach after a coaching change in the offseason. I wouldn't put it past them, though, if they're able to go up there and beat Menor, but it's a hard thing to do to go to an opposing gym and win come playoff time. But this is going to be fun, and I'm hoping maybe we get a chance to break down the brackets a little more and some teams come our show later in the week. But this is going to get fun now.
No doubt. And the Hudson thing is interesting because the Explorers were 10-12 on the season. I was expecting, compared to the seed, I was expecting a lower record, but another team that got a sectional semi-final win, I believe, would be Perry over Brush, 44-37. So the Lady Panthers remaining alive despite some of their struggles this year. They will take on East Lake North, number 15 seed, this coming Thursday. Some of the other matchups that we had throughout this run, we have Hoban beating Kent Roosevelt 43-33 in the Northeast 2 Division 1 bracket. You'll have Green coming up. They'll take on Stowe Monroe Falls, who is a 7 seed after beating Warren G. Harding. The Massillon Tigers, they'll be back on the floor against, this is an interesting one, 23-4. Shaker Heights Hathaway Brown, the 4 seed, will come in after beating Twinsburg. Northeast 4, you have a couple of teams there, including Barberton, who will take on Brecksville Broadview Heights. In the Northeast 5 bracket, a couple more northern teams along the way. And then in Division 6, or Northeast 6, excuse me, there is no Division 6. kind of more the same. School's a little bit more north of us, but we'll see a number of teams. Like you said, Jackson, Perry will be advancing. And it's going to be interesting to see where some of these teams will stack up here in the next coming weeks. We'll obviously get to the boys very soon because those tournaments are starting up after this week. So that is the end of segment 3. When we come back, we go into some more topics here, right here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Hey there, folks. This is Mitch Spinell, and I want to give you guys a quick message regarding 988. If you don't know what 988 is, it was created to make it easier to remember how to get help in the event of a mental health or addiction crisis. This is different than a medical, fire, or police emergency where 911 should still be called immediately. 988 connects you with Stark County's Crisis Center, which is equipped to help people in emotional distress or experiencing a mental health or addiction crisis. So remember, 911 for medical, fire, and police emergency help, and 988 for support in overcoming a mental health crisis in Stark County.
It takes a lot of practice to have a winning team. Albin Title has over 100 years of combined experience handling real estate, title, and escrow transactions. They serve Tuscarawas, Stark, Carroll, Harrison counties, and more. So choose Albin Title for your next home refinance, sale, or purchase. They'll get it done quickly and professionally. Contact Albin Title at 330-334-5800 or visit their website albintitle.com. Let them put their experience to work for you.
Hard work is something you're accustomed to. Van Nostrand Young understands that principle. Our access is achieved with organizations like Grange Insurance. Safety and prevention specialists utilize our VanCan assessments process to ensure that you and your colleagues are in the best hands. You want the safest environment for your business, and we can guide you there.
Call Van Nostrand Young Insurance in North Canton at 330-497-1867.
If you're purchasing a new home, the team at Hartzler's Quality Housing is here to help. Take advantage of record low interest rates to make your new home a reality. Locally owned and operated since 1978, Hartzler's Quality Housing has the experience to guide you through the process. You'll find a wide selection of model homes on site to fit any budget. Open 6 days a week just off I-77. You can also visit them online at hartzlers.com. Hartzler's Quality Housing. Quality from start to finish.
You deserve the best. And at Ferris Chevrolet, Buick, Cadillac, Toyota, that's what you get. We consider you, the customer, to be part of our family. Anybody can make promises, but when you visit Ferris, you get the Ferris deal from a Ferris wheel. So if you're looking for a car, truck, or van, think Ferris.
Wendy's without the Wendy's app is like Nugs without the sauce. Or a Frosty without the fries. Or a hamburger without the fresh beef. No! Level up. Get the app to order ahead, order delivery, earn free food, and get app-exclusive offers. One app, all the Wendy's.
Offer for a limited time at participating Wendy's. Terms apply. App registration required. Fresh beef available in contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada.
And we're back here on the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. Final segment here. We get into some miscellaneous topics over the sporting world. Mitch, we start off here with a topic that we did not get to on Thursday night, one that we've been saving for last because it means the most to us, even with Super Bowl weekend here. Even with everything that's been going on, we saw on Thursday night after we stopped recording the NFL honors, which I admittedly did not, I didn't watch any of the show, but I did get the information of who won the awards and so forth through various sources. One of those bits of information was the upcoming class. The 2023 class for the Pro Football Hall of Fame has been officially announced. And we will be headlining the class of 2023. We'll be co-headlining because Joe Thomas, longtime Cleveland Brown, longtime offensive tackle, is officially getting into the Hall of Fame. We figured it was coming because Joe Thomas is one of the top 10, if not top whatever offensive lineman of all time. I believe he's only the 15th offensive lineman, pure lineman to get in. So he'll be headlining a class that includes many great players and coaches of the past: DeMarcus Ware, Darrelle Revis, Joe Klecko, Chuck Howley, Zach Thomas, Rondé Barber, I think I said DeMarcus Ware, Ken Riley, Don Coryell. I mean, the Dwight Freeney and Revis and Thomas were the 3 first ballot players. Mitch, we knew it was coming, but it still feels special to me because this guy was the one beacon on so many Browns teams that let us down every year. This guy wasn't letting anybody down. He only allowed 30 sacks in his career, an 11-year career, which means he was allowing less than 3 sacks for an entire NFL season. That's insane.
I don't know what's more insane, that or his consecutive snap streak that was over 10,600. It was 10,663. And with what, well, I actually can't even say this because Joel Bitonio, Mitch, he's kind of in that conversation now for potentially approaching that record to maybe break it. Obviously, you need a lot of longevity and health and a little bit of luck of players not rolling up on you, but we'll have to wait and see. But as of now, the best Cleveland Brown for a majority of our life is in the Hall of Fame, first ballot. Cannot say enough about Joe Thomas. It'll be interesting to see who is in the Hall of Fame game. I would think the Browns would be in it strictly off the fact that it's not often we get Browns players inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it's only an hour drive from Cleveland down here to Canton. There's speculation it's going to be the Browns and Jets because the Jets have 2 players, Joe Klecko and Darrelle Revis, both New York Jets players that are being inducted. But you mentioned it. Rondé Barber, someone that's very deserving of getting into the Hall of Fame. People upset he didn't get in first ballot. It is so hard to get in as a first ballot Hall of Famer, Mitch. You have to be an all-time great at your position, better than other people that were potentially first ballot Hall of Famers. So obviously there's something nice that goes in with being a first ballot Hall of Famer, but the end goal is just to be a Hall of Famer in general. Darrelle Revis, I mean, Mitch, he was one of the top corners in the NFL while we were growing up. I mean, Revis Island was a real thing. So
I would add too,
and DeMarcus Ware.
I was going to say Revis Island, that was a big thing, especially at a time when the league was really starting to shift its rules to support the quarterbacks, the passing game, especially receivers on the quarterbacks. And Revis made it his specialty to keep blocking down. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you 100%. I mean, he was the best corner in all of football for a run, and there was really no argument about it. DeMarcus Ware, just a terrorizing player on that Cowboys defensive front. Zach Thomas, I still, that's another great player. Obviously, I don't remember Don Coryell as a coach, Chuck Howley, Joe Klecko, Ken Riley. I don't ever remember watching them. Those were the senior nominees, I do believe. It's going to be a fun Hall of Fame class, that's for sure. And obviously, it's always fun. But when you have somebody that you got to watch on your favorite team being inducted, like Joe Thomas, this has to feel great for him, Mitch, because he only ever had one winning season in Cleveland. That was 2007, his rookie year, when the Browns went 10-6, missed the playoffs by a game, needed some luck to get in. And also over 16 different starting quarterbacks.
Pretty much.
That he
blocked for. Pretty much.
Story of was it Josh McCown No, it wasn't Josh McCown. Somebody else he had to introduce himself to in the huddle during a game because the quarterback and Joe had never met before. Brady Quinn was on a show I listened to, and he just talked about Joe Thomas and how great he was. David Njoku was recently on someone's show during the Super Bowl week on Radio Row, and he talked about when he sat in as a rookie and Joe sat next to him, and he said, "Hey, I'm David." He goes, "Hey, I'm Joe." He goes, "Are you a coach?" He goes, I am, except for on Sundays, I'm a player too." That's Joe is always this witty, funny, but hardworking, somebody that really embodied the city of Cleveland. And I think that's why we loved him so much. Very well deserved for one of the greatest left tackles of all time.
Really quick before I wax on more about Joe, it was Josh Johnson. He introduced himself to in the huddle because Thaddeus Lewis, never forget Thaddeus Lewis, was knocked out of the game, and then Johnson had to. It was right at the end of the game, but it just kind of made it that much funnier. But that's what made Joe Thomas a legend in the city too, is that he was one of the best personalities the Browns have had in quite a long time. He was well known for being involved with the city of Cleveland. The city embraced him. He embraced the city. He was the Walter Payton nominee for the Browns in 3 years. And I remember when he got drafted, it wasn't a case of like, oh, this guy is going to change our future. We were like, Joe Thomas, this guy from Wisconsin. You mentioned Brady Quinn. It's like, why are we picking him number 5? What are we doing here? Yeah. But it turned out to be a very, very solid pick. I forgot he finished second in the AP voting, offensive rookie of the year, to Adrian Peterson, which that's no feat if you knew how good both guys were coming out of the gate.
Right. And what's even funny, I still think the draft day story of Joe Thomas is so funny, Mitch. This is a guy that now you see it more times than not. All these first round picks or, projected first round picks are now, it was Radio City Music Hall, but now wherever the draft is at, are typically there in person to shake the commissioner's hand, hold up the jersey. Joe Thomas was fishing with his dad when he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns. I just think that's hilarious. And not to say that he didn't take it seriously, but Joe Thomas always had that way of making sure that he still lived his life outside of football, but also, he's very big family oriented. There was the videos they put out when he made it of all his former teammates, family and everything. It got him choked up. He cried, was very emotional, and for good reason. It'll be interesting to see where they put him in terms of speeches, because that's always a big deal. Last typically means you were the best for last here at the Hall of Fame when you give your speech last. Yeah. I hope he's last. But there is always that time that you have to try to give your speech in. And if he tries to make the quarterback he's probably going to have to talk for about 2 hours, because that's how many different quarterbacks he blocked for. But a great class coming in. I'm very excited. Some notables left off the list that we can break down another time.
Yeah.
But very well deserved. So happy for Joe.
We gotta get those tickets, man. Or we gotta get some passes. So we're gonna have to go to the higher ups, and we're gonna get in that area of the Pro Football Hall of Fame one way or another, because this is a once in a lifetime, hopefully more often in the future, when we get to see more of these Browns that we currently have potentially make it in as finalists. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up, this stupid rule that Major League Baseball has been operating since the pandemic year is apparently going to stick around for a little while longer. The MLB is reportedly making the extra inning ghost runner rule permanent for regular season games. Every regular season half inning in extras will automatically start with a runner on base. I hated this. I understood this idea when you needed it during a year where you needed to get games done and people away from each other. But the last 2 seasons going into a third, you're going to have this dumb rule where it's basically going to feel like a little league tournament where you just have to get it done in one pitch. I know you're trying to change these rules to make the game quicker, faster, and more efficient, but this is a stupid rule, and I really wish this is one of the rules that the league had repealed from all those changes that they had made. They had already done the away with the 7-inning doubleheaders. They had already done with a couple other things. This is one that should have been along with them.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. As somebody that played baseball, the only time I ever experienced it playing growing up in the 17, 18 years I played baseball was in tournaments, when obviously you have 6 or 7 games you're trying to fit in a day. So yes, you have to speed the game up. These are professionals. I hate it. But there's a lot of things I hate with Major League Baseball with the current commissioner, and I could go on and on with that, but I'm not going to. I also saw that there's a new, not a new rule, but something else they added in terms of pitching. Now we won't be able to see as many position players pitching that we have seen before in the past. There's now rules that they can only enter at a certain time with a certain score or margin, which, it is what it is. This rule, Mitch, to begin with, I hate. Not a fan of the pitch clock rule for pitchers now, when I believe it's 15 seconds in between pitches with nobody on base, 20 seconds with a runner on. And a batter has a number or a certain amount of time in the box to get back in the box, or a strike is called, or if a pitcher violates it, it's an automatic ball. It's not going to be long before we have robo umps, which I'm not a fan of. I know a lot of people are, but I just don't like the way Rob Manfred has baseball going right now. And it starts with the blackout restrictions, but I'm done. No more rants from me.
That's fair. That the blackout thing was fair. The position player pitching thing, it's a fun thing on Cut 4's Twitter page, but I can see why they're trying to reduce that, because it's basically just like a gimmick you have during blowouts. It's funny. I was looking up some of the numbers here. Approximately 10% of regular season baseball games go into extra innings historically. You had about 9.2% of them last year. There were 37 13-inning games in 2019 alone, which is last year with the usual rules, which I understand the thinking is that you don't want these games to go 18 innings. But if anything, maybe they could implement a rule like this once you get to a certain point where the game goes egregiously long, like the 13th or the 14th inning, not in the 10th inning when you could easily just affect the game to a point where you give up a single. And then if it's in the gap enough, the game could be over on a walk-off hit.
Yeah, It irritates me. It really does. I don't know why. I know like somebody like my dad, he's kind of come around to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, he also is not a fan of it by any means. We'll get used to it, I guess, since it's going to be implemented every season moving forward, as it stated in the release today. It's always fun because it also not fun, funny because it irritates me still though, because I'm somebody that it's depending where you're at in the order, want them to get them to third, get them in with if you're at the top of the order, but we don't see teams do that quite often anymore.
Well, here's the thing too. The postseason games are going to be normal. It's not like they're going to keep this.
I know.
This is so stupid. I know it's regular season games. A lot of these games in early April or late August may not be worth anything. I get that, but it's so stupid. If you're going to do one thing, don't do another thing that's different in the postseason, man.
Right. The same thing goes with the NFL, Mitch. They altered the overtime rules of the NFL because of a game we saw last postseason between the Chiefs and the Bengals, and it is now only a postseason rule. Implement that all season if you're going to do it that way. And if you're not going to do it in the playoffs for baseball, then don't do it now. It's irritating. I hate it.
Well, I hate to end the show in a point where we're both irritated, but that's how we're going to end the Big Time Sports Podcast show. I'll just rattle off the things here. You know, you can go to our website, bigtimesportsohio.com. Check us out here on YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud for our show, the Big Time Sports Podcast Show. You can also check us out on Anchor, which is where we distribute the podcast into multiple platforms from. You can obviously go to Facebook or Instagram, Big Time Sports Ohio, at BTS Ohio on Twitter, and then pretty much everywhere at Mitch Spinell, at Mitchell Balla. Mitch, what's the fact of the day other than this MLB extra inning rule sucks?
Well, yeah, that's true. The Rob Manfred sucks as the commissioner.
I think his heart's in a good place, but you know, he's not go ahead.
Well, we can agree to disagree there. Mitch, 27 days until Selection Sunday for men's college basketball in the NCAA tournament. Right here, I have it written down. 11 teams that I feel confident in to win the national championship. May have put $1 to $3 in all teams.
Sure.
On a futures bet. I cannot wait to start breaking down college basketball. I have been not watching Ohio State because they are not good, but watching other college basketball games. So 27 days, Mitch, 27 days.
Alabama, man, made number one for the first time in 20 years. See if the Tide will be the champions by season's end. We'll see you guys on the next episode, listening or watching the Big Time Sports Podcast Show.